The heat rose off the desert floor in shimmering waves, the kind that bends the air and makes even close objects look distant. By mid-afternoon, the temperature in Death Valley had climbed past 120 degrees, and the 6 people standing beside their vehicle could feel the weight of it pressing into their chests. They had taken a rough dirt track into the backcountry near Anvil Canyon, following what they believed was a simple route through a remote but manageable stretch of the valley. The plan was to explore for a few hours, take photographs, and return before the heat became dangerous. But the desert does not care about plans. The vehicle had bogged down suddenly, the tires spinning deeper into loose sand each time they tried to accelerate. They pushed from behind. They dug at the wheels with their hands. They rested and tried again. Every attempt drained more strength, and the sand only swallowed the tires further. The engine gave off a sharp, overheated smell. When they finally shut it down, the silence felt heavier than the heat. There was no shade, no movement, no sound, but the faint hiss of wind sliding across the ground. They checked their supplies. Between the 6 of them, they had only a few bottles of water, enough for a brief stop, not an emergency. There were snacks, but nothing that would help them against dehydration. No one had a radio. And in 1996, Death Valley offered almost no cell reception at all. The nearest paved road was miles away over open desert, and the route they had followed in looked different now in the punishing light, as if the valley had erased the landmarks behind them. At first they tried to stay calm. They agreed they would walk back the way they came, staying together and conserving what little water they had. But once they stepped into the open stretches beyond the stuck vehicle, the heat hit them with a force none of them had expected. It reflected upward from the pale ground and wrapped around their legs and backs. Within minutes, shirts clung to their skin and their breathing grew shallow. They took small sips of water, trying to make it last, but each swallow felt too small to matter. After less than a mile, the first signs of heat exhaustion appeared. One member slowed down and stumbled, his steps unsteady. Another complained that his vision was blurring around the edges. They stopped briefly to regroup, but stopping only made the sun feel more intense, as if the air itself were tightening around them. The survivor would later recall how quickly their pace broke apart, how some tried to push ahead, thinking distance was the enemy, while others insisted they needed to rest before they collapsed completely. They kept walking, heads down, following the faint memory of the road they had come in on. But the terrain shifted almost imperceptibly with every ridge and wash. Soon, they were no longer certain which direction led back to the main route. The desert offered no guidance. Every rise looked like the last. Every shadow moved with the sun. What had seemed like a simple walk became a fight to stay upright. Their water ran out. Sweat dried instantly on their skin, leaving them coated in salt. Their mouths turned so dry they could barely speak. One collapsed. The group shaded him with their bodies, but there was nothing more they could do. Another wandered several yards away, confused, before dropping to his knees. The heat removed reason as quickly as it removed strength. They had intended to stay together, but the desert pulled them apart. Each person struggled at a different pace, and the effort to help one another drained the rest even faster. The survivor later described the moment he realized they were losing people. It happened quietly, without dramatic collapse, like watching a person drift into sleep and fail to wake. By late afternoon, the sun still had hours before setting. The survivor pushed forward, focusing on the horizon, even as dizziness made the ground tilt. He could feel his pulse pounding in his temples. His legs shook each time he planted a foot. He passed the place where one of the others had fallen, then another. He wanted to stop, but he knew stopping meant dying where he stood. He kept moving, driven not by clarity, but by instinct, trying to connect fragmented memories of the landscape to something that might still lead him out. When sunset finally came, the temperature began to drop, but the damage was already done. The group was scattered across miles, and he was the only one still moving. The sky turned dark with almost no warning, swallowing the shapes of the land. He followed the faint outline of a ridge, hoping it would lead to a wash or trail. At one point, he fell to his knees and had to rest his forehead against the ground just to breathe. But even then, his body forced him forward again. Sometime in the early morning hours, he reached a narrow service road cut into the desert. He collapsed beside it, unable to walk farther. His skin was dangerously hot to the touch, his pulse weak. He faded in and out through the night, unsure if he would live long enough to see daylight. When a ranger patrol drove past shortly after sunrise, the vehicle nearly missed him. Only a slight movement from his arm caught the ranger's eye. Rescuers rushed him to medical care, where doctors confirmed he was in the late stages of heat stroke. His kidneys were close to failing. His blood pressure was unstable, but he survived long enough to tell them where the others might be. Search teams went out immediately, fanning across washes and ridges, marking tire tracks, footprints, and discarded items. By the end of the day, they found the first body. The others followed, each one located along the rough line of their attempted escape. Investigators later reconstructed the ordeal with forensic precision. The group had underestimated the terrain, overestimated their supplies, and misjudged how fast extreme heat can break the human body. Their vehicle had become immovable at the worst possible spot. Their map offered no warning about the loose sand, and once they left the vehicle, the desert erased their path behind them and left no margin for error. The survivor recovered over several weeks. Physical strength returned first, but the memory of what happened stayed with him. He had seen friends fall, had felt the heat strip the moisture from his body, had walked with the understanding that turning back meant dying next to them. He survived because he moved long enough to reach a ravine that led to a service road. It was a matter of endurance measured in minutes, not miles. The Death Valley 6 became a study in how quickly extreme heat overwhelms the human body, even among groups who think they are prepared. There was no dramatic crash, no storm, no sudden event. It was the slow, relentless pressure of the desert, the kind that gives warnings only once and then takes everything. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.